All right, guys, we are here today with the founder of Rabbit Hole, Mr. Kaveh Zamanian. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me some time today. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, and I can't wait to break into some of the whiskey that you are making.
I love it. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, very happy to have you. We have almost talked so many times that I'm happy I finally got you on the show. Every time I'm in town, you're out of town, so we finally hooked up via Zoom. And you are quite the whiskey renaissance man.
Oh my God, I don't know about that, but I appreciate it.
Well, I was going through your background, and you have lived quite the life. What, just to paint with broad strokes here, what brought you to whiskey? Like you have been through a couple different careers before you got to it.
Yeah, I cut my teeth in the hospitality business. So when I was a kid, a lot of bar and restaurant work. That was where I really first kind of fell in love with fine wine and fine spirits. Then, of course, meeting my wife, who's from Kentucky, and started coming down here about a little bit over 20 years ago, about 22 years ago in Kentucky, and just slowly got the bug, man. I just kind of got exposed to it through a lot of local folks who were sharing wonderful dusties, and got a taste of what bourbon was and can be, and that was the beginning of my journey. That slowly, started with kind of a just passion to obsession, and eventually deciding to jump down the rabbit hole and start the brand.
And now, when you started Rabbit Hole, it was still pre-boom. Like you opened the doors in 2012, if I'm correct, and you like you're talking about a leap of faith. You had an active practice in another industry, and just what I mean. 2003 was your first trip to Kentucky. That must have been some hell of a rabbit hole that you were willing to go down in 2012 just to like walk away from it all.
Yeah, I think just to give you a perspective, in 2012, when I started Rabbit Hole, there was not a single bank in the state of Kentucky that lent money to bourbon. And it was just amazing because I went to almost every bank you could imagine, and they would be lending money to the equine industry, but they would not lend to bourbon. They just didn't understand it. It was just shocking to me. And we've come a long way, obviously, since then with all the investment and all the just kind of excitement, if you would, around bourbon.
Well, and you weren't interested in just coming in and doing it. You wanted to do it at the highest level possible. You weren't interested in sourcing. Like you wanted to come in and put your fingerprint on it from the beginning. What were your like who were your Sherpas? Like how did you coming from the outside stand up such an endeavor without being from Kentucky?
Yeah, I think I had the good fortune of meeting a lot of great folks here in the Commonwealth. Probably Larry Ebersol would be, the one person that I got to point to that was just really instrumental in me kind of understanding the whiskey making process and having an appreciation for what it goes to really make a unique product and a quality product. And I think along those lines, there was other folks, Jordan Villa, who was at the time in Breckenridge, and he was their first master distiller. Jordan and I worked together for a weekend, and he really kind of also opened my eyes to what craft bourbon can be, among other folks. And that was really the beginning of being able to see that bourbon has a lot of potential, not just from a standpoint of what it could be from a business perspective, but from a liquid standpoint, because I felt that there was a lot of monotony, and a lot of room for creativity. I also did my homework and knew and realized that there was a point in the Commonwealth where we had over 2,000 distilleries with a lot of diversity, a lot of farmer distillers, and all those different expressions fell by the side during Prohibition. So, all that work, just from a standpoint of, the academic side of it, and then having people like Larry and Jordan and other folks that were kind enough to help me out, opened my eyes to what I can do and to do it in a different way. Because if you wanted to do it in a simple way just to make money, I think sourcing and blending was the way to go. And I remember one of my early consultants, his name is Richard Wolf, and Richard passed away a few years ago. He was at Sazerac, and he was definitely one of those mentors and Sherpas, if you would, who used to tell me, he's like, why don't you just, source and blend and be done with it because you're taking a lot of risk. And I remember having a conversation with Richard and telling him, look, what I'm trying to do is to create something that not only is unique, but something that is lasting, where when people open up a bottle of Rabbit Hole, they know they're getting a one of a kind expression, and it's not just something that they can buy, from 10 different brands. And now that we are in a stage where there's a downturn in the industry, and we're seeing a lot of inventory in the market. It's really proving my point, where the unique play piece with Rabbit Hole is that anything you're going to taste in the bottle is one of a kind. You can't source and blend these products, and those recipes are really, I think, the legacy of what we've created with the team here.
You've been able to create such a bold flavor. Like one of my favorite parts about the Rabbit Hole liquid is the mouth feel. There's a very specific mouth feel when you're drinking Rabbit Hole. You can pick it out of a lineup, and I think that is a wonderful calling card for what you're talking about in terms of this could be this and that could be that. But when you're drinking Rabbit Hole, you know immediately that you've got something that is not like anything else you're going to get in the market.
Yeah, I was very much inspired by the craft beer movement. I think the craft beer guys really showed us what beer can be, and I think the same playbook is what I used with Rabbit Hole, because there's a lot of opportunity from a standpoint of using different types of grains, what the grain can bring to the whiskey flavor, and that's been essentially our bread and butter. As I've mentioned several times before in other forums, is that to me, bourbon is 51% corn, 49% possibility. And that possibility is what you're tasting in the bottle, where it really builds on that base of lovely base, sweet base of corn to bring in some other flavors that are just complemented. And in the end, it's a product punch you in the face. For me, a good whiskey has to be balanced from a flavor standpoint. So you're able to have a real nice sensory experience, if you would.
And there's in previous writings, there's an artistry to whiskey through your eyes, and that comes through, I think, in the distillery as well. What role has contemporary art played in your brand development of Rabbit Hole?
You know, um, Very much so. I lived in Chicago for over 20 years. I was very much influenced by the kind of modern architecture of Louis Sullivan or Mies van der Rohe, and this basic principle of form follows function. So when we were designing the distillery, um, my principal creative partner, Doug Pearson, and his wife, Jan, who were the architects of the distillery, we basically retranslated that principle to form follows process. And the idea was to make sure that we build a distillery where not only is functional, doing these creative single batch expressions, and to be able to do it in a way that is able to scale, but more importantly, create a space where um, the visitors are able to be in the soup, experience every step of the process, see it, and experience it from a sensory standpoint. And then the process really educates and elevate American whiskey. That was really the principal idea behind it. And the artistic kind of experiences, be it from the architecture in Chicago of those modern architects, or any of the other kind of I think influential artists that I've experienced and over the years, were part of the thinking and the conversation with Doug and Jan in designing the place.
Well, you really do get almost a museum feel from the lobby, from the walk-through area. There's just from the like just even as you walk in, from the awning, from the way that you've got the Rabbit Hole set up, like you really did nail that one in terms of there's nothing else quite like it in Louisville.
I appreciate it, man. No, that means a lot. Thank you. I think, for us, it was really important to build something that not only stands out from a standpoint of a bourbon experience, but also do something positive for our community. Because where we are, at one point, there was not much going on there. And Rabbit Hole was a gamble to go to Nulu in Louisville. It was an $18 million investment in a neighborhood that was really struggling in a lot of ways. And I feel very proud with my team to have contributed to, in a renaissance, if you would, of that neighborhood and bringing other businesses to the community, but also for the bourbon industry, elevating the hospitality game, right? So we are no longer just, you sit on a porch bench and you got a straw in your mouth and the traditional experience, which is really lovely, but to bring a more modern contemporary experience for Kentucky bourbon.
Well, and in any area that is, maybe hurting a little bit, I when we lived in New York, you saw it in New York. The artists go to an area, the artists make it nice, and then the commerce builds around it. I think if whiskey is art, you've done the same thing in Nulu, because once people realize there's something of value being done, then they fill in, and then you have seen the area build up since you guys started. What are the big changes that you've seen in whiskey from your initial offerings, from when you opened in 2012? Like, I mean, a lot of things have changed from then till now. Like, what is your perspective on that growth?
I think a lot of things. I think, to start off with something as simple as the name, right? Rabbit Hole is not a traditional name. We could have easily gone out and essentially picked up one of the old names and refurbished it, if you would. I think move on beyond that, look at the package, right? We could have gone to a package that had some of the more traditional cues, if you would. And we decided to go something that, for me, the design was very intentional to have masculine and feminine elements, but at the same time work really well for bartenders. The idea was to see if we can design an elegant package where it also begins to bring new consumers to the fold, that were not just appealing to the traditional bourbon consumer. And then, of course, the liquid, as we talked about, has got to be essentially not only quality, but gives you a range of expressions and experiences very similar to wine. That, the way wine was back in the early 80s, what do we have? Like white wine, red wine, and rosé. And now, we have the proliferation of all kinds of different varietals. And I think that bourbon, for me initially, and where it's going, is exactly along those lines. So now you're seeing a lot of other distilleries not only creating new and diverse expressions, different finishes, different packaging, being more playful. All those things, I think, are things that have changed, not to say anything about the hospitality experience, where I feel that everybody in at least Kentucky that I know have raised their game when it comes to hospitality and the guest experience.
Well, two things, right? Like, you've got more people doing it, which forces the cream to rise, and you've also got a more educated consumer than you had back in the day. So you've got expectations combined with that updated education. So you can't just rest on your laurels anymore. Rabbit Hole, from a marketing perspective, has always been above it. Like, I was just looking at, there's like everything got branded. Like not only did the expression get the name of what it is, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, but you named it and you made the packaging stand out. Like, the bottle, of course, is gorgeous, and for what you didn't go wacky. Like, you didn't go so big that it couldn't sit on a back bar, but you also made it, if you put it next to a basic bottle, it stands out as a heightened user experience from the time you pick it up. Uh, but one of the things that really got me from the get-go is the textured label. Like,
Mm.
just such minute details that heightened the whole thing. And the regular whiskey consumer at the time, they weren't nobody was doing that. Like, that's just money. Everything you do heightened is money. And you being able to put it out there, I Rabbit Hole's always stood out as one of those elegant heightened whiskey brands.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you for those kind words. And I feel like along those lines, yeah, that's part of what I think we've done as a brand, is to kind of raise the bar, if you would, for the industry. And I think along those lines, and since you're talking about the bottle and the label, one of the things that I'm really proud of, and I think we were one of the first brands that did that, we put the recipe on the label. So every label has the recipes of the bourbon. So you can turn it around and just basically plainly see in full view what actually that bourbon is made of. So there's no smoke screen here. There's clarity, there's transparency, and ultimately gives the consumer the choice to be able to make a selection and understand, just like wine again, that there is no one type of bourbon in and when you've got four different expressions of Rabbit Hole, I don't expect one person to love every single one of them, but they're likely to kind of be leaning based on their own palate and experience to one. Just again, the same way that we pick different types of red wine or white wine.
Well, your core expressions have something for everyone. Like whatever mood you're in, you've got something that they can go and have one for almost every day of the week. If you're in the mood for the Cave Hill, or if you're in mood for the Derringer, I didn't say that right, but the
You're right. That was perfect. Perfect.
Derringer.
Yeah.
But there's something for every mood that you may be in. And that's another thing, that the transparency you were talking about, nobody was doing like the reason this thing has gone as far as it's gone in the past 12 to 15 years is the fact that the consumer stopped being treated like an idiot. Like you didn't make up a story about John C. Rabbit Hole grew up in 1745. Like you respected the intelligence of the person, as well as maybe teaching them a little something along the way.
No, absolutely. I think part of it was because I approached it as a consumer, and going back to your earlier question, it was my frustration as a consumer that was part of the spark of starting the brand in the first place. And that empathy and understanding of what consumers long for was part of what really drove some of these decisions. And ultimately, exactly like you said it's about having respect for the consumer and having an appreciation for the fact that they need to and would like to know what is it actually that they're consuming.
Well, it includes them, right? Like
Yeah.
when you educate them, it builds that community so that they're not just like outside looking in. It's like they can now talk about it. Like you mentioned wine. The beauty of the wine industry is when you get a group of people sitting around talking about the notes that they get, talking about the different experience that they're having. And we've now replicated that in the whiskey space by people that aren't just drinking to imbibe, they are drinking and they're putting the expressions next to each other and sitting there going, you know what? I get a little bit of toasted toffee. Well, I get a little bit of dark fruit. Like it creates a conversation, which creates the community.
Definitely. And one of my favorite things to do when it comes to tasting our core products is putting Cave Hill next to High Gold and basically say, look, these are two products that both have 70% corn, but 30% of the ingredients are completely different. See what you experience and see the difference. And it really is an eye-opening experience to see the impact of the grains on the final product.
That's the beauty, right? Like that's where the art meets nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So from your previous life, I have to ask, like, did you see more, have you met more bizarre people in when you were a psychoanalyst, or have you met more people that could use a psychoanalyst now that you're in whiskey?
It's probably the latter, honestly. But I got to say, we're having more fun in this industry than I did with psychology. Don't get me wrong, I actually really enjoyed my career there, and I couldn't do what I'm doing without that experience. But at the same time, one of the things I love about our industry is just really people are happy. They generally have a smile on their face and they want to enjoy, and there's something really lovely about that.
Well, and after two or three drams, they're probably going to tell you all their problems anyway.
That's true. That is true.
Maybe if you'd have pulled a little bit of it into the previous practice, you could have, might have got it out of them before the hour was up.
Maybe, maybe.
So now that you have everything stood up and established, where do you want it to go? I mean, you've been at this now for a while. Where do you see the long-term journey taking you with Rabbit Hole?
So Rabbit Hole is about to hit its stride in a way that I think is going to be really eye-opening for the consumer in the industry. So you're going to see basically coming halfway through 2026, Rabbit Hole core products all coming in. Basically, everything we're putting out now is 6+ years old. So it's that sweet spot of 6 to 8 year old for our core products. Our single barrels are all basically between 8 to 10 years old. So I'm really excited to see the products kind of come to the market and have consumer be able to experience it in a way that is just even a notch or two above and beyond what it's been. And that to me is really exciting about what we're doing with Rabbit Hole. And I think personally, beyond that, I've had the good fortune of having a partnership with Pernod Ricard where I have been able to create other brands with them, Mary Dowling, Mash and Mallow. And I think those are opportunities that really are unicorn opportunities because you don't find a corporate partner that allows you to play and be creative in the way that we have been able to do with Pernod Ricard. And I think those are all things that to me personally are very exciting and keeps the fun and joy going.
It's how you keep scratching that artistic itch.
100%. Yeah. Not only myself, but also with the team. We got a great team at Rabbit Hole, and that's part of what's really exciting about it, that this is a community effort and a lot of great folks that have been part of the making from, the grain to glass.
100%. And you mentioned your single barrels. I've never seen anybody the artwork that you put on the single barrels, like above and beyond. Uh, just it can go anywhere from abstract to surreal. Just complete artistic expression that goes into the labels on the single barrels, much less the liquid that goes inside of them.
Yeah, and then I think the one thing I would add to that is that it's not just an aesthetic experience or exercise, right? It's an exercise in storytelling as well. So we're very intentional in finding emerging artists and being able to, through the work that they've done, tell their story, tell the story of Rabbit Hole or the products. And I think that's what's really exciting for me to be able to not only showcase the liquid but also tell the story either through the names or through the artists. That it just makes the whole experience more fun.
100%. And it gives it that luster. It gives it a little bit of that imagination mystique to it as well, because you got to really think through what you're looking at. You got to like take yourself down that, we're going to do it again, down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, um, the other thing that was very top of mind for me is that um, we're not here to make products. It's not about getting drunk. It's
No.
about enjoying and imbibing and being able to share, fun and festivities with friends and family. That's what's really about.
Well, that's how you keep it from being one note. If you're
Yeah,
just drinking to imbibe, then why put the effort in? You can do that easily. But to be a part of something larger is to drink the better spirits and to be a part of the community that will, you know, embrace and rise up.
definitely, definitely.
Your distillery releases as well. I've had the fortune of drinking some of those. What is the starting point? Like when we're getting ready to drink through this Amrulé. What is the starting point? Like what do you think, or how do you when you're building the blueprint for one of these distillery releases? I think I've got the cognac behind me as well. Like
Mhm.
what is the starting point for when you're starting this off?
Yeah, so for me, the distillery series is an opportunity to play around with different finishes in particular. And what you're seeing is essentially one of series of experiments, wood experiences, basically. So we've kind of gone around the world, and be it from French oak, Brazilian oak, and in this case, different types of barrel finishes. Those are kind of part and parcel of our innovation platform, and that's what these products fall under. And the way I think about it is that the distillery is like a culinary kitchen designed to scale. So we come together as a culinary team, if you would, and we brainstorm as a sensory team, as a creative team, and think about different projects and potentials. And honestly, it's a very communal, I think, experience. The way I think about it is that I want everybody to come to the table with their ideas. There is no bad idea. We vetted we decide on which one to pursue and we go from there. And this is basically, the wood series. The finishes are kind of part and parcel of the same process, and we genuinely just want to push the envelope to see what kind of flavor range we can get. In this case, not so much with the grains, but with the different wood and the impact of the barrels on the product.
And which barrels? Because I'm sitting here reading through this, like how first tell me what's going on with the wood. Like which barrels did you guys pull from, and just was it of course exploration, but was it just like trial and error to get this combination where you wanted it, or you had the idea and then you worked through what you had at your disposal to put the flavor that you liked at the end of the rainbow?
Yeah, so distillery series kind of for us by definition is experimental, and it's really exclusive to what we release within the distillery. So we give ourselves more leeway in experimentation and even failure for that matter, right? So what you're tasting right now, for example, is our rye whiskey finished in maple brûlé barrels, right? We think about the base products that we have. We have a 4 grain, which is a Cave Hill. We got a high rye double malt, which is high gold. We got wheated bourbon, and we've got essentially our rye whiskey. So part of the thinking was, how would, let's say, a maple brûlé barrel impact our rye whiskey, which is the one you're tasting, versus Cave Hill versus high gold? So we do the experiment with all the different base bourbons, and decide based on what the quality of it, if it's worthy of release, and if it is, then we kind of go from there. But in the meantime, we've learned a lot in terms of, let's say, how maple brûlé impacts our rye versus our 4 grain versus our high rye versus our wheated, and that becomes really kind of a base of information data that we play around with and decide, all right, which ones are worthy of release, which ones we should kind of keep working on.
Well, it definitely makes me want to go to the distillery.
I would, yeah, you got to look. We've had probably about 7 or 8 releases so far, and we've got over a dozen different projects in the pipeline. And that's one of the really coolest experiences of coming to the distillery, because you can sit down and basically have a flight of our distillery series, and just really get not only an education but a really lovely experience of what again wood does to a bourbon.
It's also a beautiful room. Like, I mean, just top notch. Like, you didn't see a lot of elegance in whiskey uh prior to Rabbit Hole. Like, you know what I mean? Like you were talking a minute ago, you saw a lot of the same wood, lots of wood. And you're
Yeah.
gonna sit there on a wooden stool in a barn and drink whiskey. And you've really heightened it with like the entire look and feel of the tasting room that you guys have built at the distillery.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's the overlook bar that not only, literally oversees the distillery, also gives you a nice viewpoint of downtown and our neighborhood. Yeah, it's a great place to just hang out, do flights and or just get a cocktail and enjoy the view.
The thing I'm loving about this nose is the complexity, the multitude of things that you get. Like it is not one note at all. Like you're getting hints of sugar, you're getting hints of like organic. Like there's a lot of things going into the nose, and they're all like that enticing. They're pulling you into what, of course, the goal is, which is come have a sip.
Yeah, and I think that what you're tasting is a really fun experiment for me. Because has been because you got the rye whiskey. Our rye whiskey has the spice of obviously, but it's got subtle floral and citrus notes. And now it comes in contact with these maple barrels, and you got the sweetness of maple coming in, and you get a really nice blend of, if you would, spice, citrus, sweetness. I mean, it's just a real symphony.
I think my favorite part about this, and I when people do finishes, the whiskey needs to be front and center. And the first thing you get when you taste this is you get that rabbit hole through line. Like you
Mhm.
get that brand consistent flavor profile that you want from a rabbit hole. And then after the whiskey, then you get hints of sweet from that maple, then you get the rest of the things following suit. And it does, symphony is a perfect word for it because it builds to like
Yeah.
this volumetric symphony where every piece of the palette gets affected. It's working the middle, it's working the side, and then it's doing that beautiful thing like right there where you're just like, okay, now I got to have another sip.
Yeah, I was just doing a tasting the other day with some folks, and I noticed a couple of people just shoot it, and I had to pause and tell them, look,
Please don't do that.
please don't do that. Like, just take a small sip, coat your tongue, let it get acclimated, and then your second sip, let it linger, and particularly helping them really think about the finish and enjoying the finish, because you got the front palate, mid palate, but then the finish, you got that nice lingering sweetness that is just supposed to be exactly the way it's supposed to be with a maple brulee.
Now, you have probably walked people through so many times the whiskey. How do you A, have the patience, and B, what, well, I mean, because I mean, when I do tastings, the first thing I try to tell people is slow down. Like you
Yeah,
were just saying, don't shoot it, just really try to focus in on what you're personally getting. But
yeah.
with your, I mean, depth of knowledge on this, how do you walk somebody? Because when they get to the distillery, they're excited. So you've already got somebody that's heightened in the sense of I'm here, I'm doing the thing. Ah, how do you bring them back down to earth and get them where they can just really process and enjoy the whiskey at hand?
Yeah, I look at my role and the team that we have at Rabbit Hole. We're stewards. We have to be patient in order to be able to do our job right. And that includes also people that are connoisseurs, because sometimes we get people on the other end of the spectrum that come in and they do have a lot of experience, and they might kind of presume things before really allowing themselves to experience it. So it's patience for the novice, but also for the experienced folks, particularly at a place like Rabbit Hole, where they come in and, generally speaking, especially on the connoisseur end of it, they come in with a lot of skepticism because they see the distillery, they see the bottle, and they're like, oh, this is just kind of a flash in a pan trying to be fancy bourbon. And we have to help those guys also slow down to be able to give the product a real chance. So patience, I think, is part of what we exercise day to day. Of course, being a psychologist, that helps a lot in terms of being patient. And I was a professor for all those years as well. So teaching is part of what I enjoy. And I think in this case, there's nothing more, fun than being able to share a glass with people that are learning about bourbon and being able to impart that information.
The new whiskey consumer, I think, exhibits that latter uh, personality that you're talking about, where they really are just enthused by it and they're just wanting to be a part of it and learn.
Yeah.
That other whiskey, the whiskey know it all. I think whiskey fans and wrestling fans have a lot in common sometimes, where they
Yeah.
want to know everything about it, even if learning that isn't in the cards for what they want to do.
Yeah. That's a great point.
And you want to hit both of them with chairs sometimes as well. I've been on that tour you're talking about where the guy won't let the tour guide talk because, well, actually, if you'll look back to, and then insert whatever nobody else cares about on the tour.
Right, right. Yeah, those guys sometimes tend to be more challenging than the newbies, because the newbies actually, for the most part, they want to learn and they acknowledge what they don't know. It's the folks that think that they know, but they really don't know all. So,
I try to enter into every conversation with the assumption when I'm talking to someone that's like been doing it longer than me that I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it served me well so far.
no, I think that's the way to go, man, because we're always learning. I mean, I've been at it for a long time, but I go in it and I'm still learning. There's so much more to learn, and I know that there's a lot of people that have been at it a lot longer than I have, and I'm always eager. If there's something to pick up, 100%, I'm all ears.
What's the cool part of the past 10 years? Like, look at the things that have come to the forefront of the spectrum of what can be done with whiskey. That if you'd have just said no we wouldn't have all of these different expressions that we're playing with right now. There wouldn't
Yeah.
be so many barrel finishes and toasted finishes and this and that and all the fun that we have.
Yeah, no, no, for sure, for sure. We are really at a point where I think it's a genuine renaissance of bourbon and American whiskey. And I've said this before, the best days of American whiskey and bourbon are ahead because there's been so many great whiskey makers producing exceptional products, and we're just beginning to start getting a taste for those.
Where do you see it going? Like, where do you see the innovation taking us?
I think we're a little bit of a challenging point right now because the market slowed down a little bit. I think that what I'm afraid of is some of the craft guys falling by the wayside just because of the economics of the business. I hope that doesn't happen. I think that, while I have a tremendous amount of respect for some of the old guards, be it, Sazerac or Brown Forman, you know, part of my concern is that a lot of consumers just kind of look at those brands and they don't, or companies, and they don't really take a look at the newcomers because I think there are a lot of newcomers that have done some exceptional things. So I just hope that this economic kind of downturn a little bit doesn't take people to a more conservative position and allows them to keep, tasting different things and reaching for the new bottle and the new brand. And I'm even including that in the rabbit hole in the fold because even though we've been around for a while, when I go around the country, there's still a lot of folks that don't know about Rabbit Hole, and they're more apt to pick up yet another Sazerac bottle, even though, you tell them it's the same recipe. Why? Because it's more familiar, and I don't blame them for it. But I do tell them that, look, if you take a chance on some of these newer brands, you might be surprised, pleasantly surprised.
That's interesting. So your worry is that when uh, people are tightening their belts, so to speak, that they're going to kind of like not regress, but more put their head back in the turtle shell and stop exploring and just
Yeah.
stick with what they've always known.
Yeah, which is completely understandable, right? If you're on a budget, you're gonna pick up what you know rather than pick up what you don't know, because you don't want to waste money and you want to be, spending wisely. That makes sense. And I think that's what worries me kind of going into the next year or two, where I do think it's going to be a little bit of a crunch for smaller players. Um, you know, but the tragedy would be for people not to taste the great products that are coming out of the smaller brands, which I think, again, I've personally tasted, in addition to Rabbit Hole, a lot of great brands that are doing wonderful stuff. And it's really exciting to see, um, you know, brands like New Riff. I mean, New Riff is one of those brands where I tip my hat to them. They're doing some exceptional work, and there's still a good portion of the country is there to discover new riffs and the rabbit holes of the world.
1,000%. Do you see, you know, how during the pandemic you saw people finding new expressions through bourbon groups and like the way we all stayed in touch with each other during that time? Uh, in this new I don't want to call it a downturn, in this new whatever we're going through right now, uh, the bars could become just as important as they were at the beginning of the boom because people that are more hesitant to maybe go buy the bottle, you can still go to your local whiskey hole and try whatever is on the menu and then there educate yourself so that if you're worried about that risk, if you're worried about that coinage, you can go, oh, I had this at the Crunkleton in Charlotte. Now I'm going to go have it for myself when I go to the liquor store.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think bars, and I would even add, be it independent liquor stores or even kind of, I was at a tasting not too long ago at Liquor Barn here in Kentucky, and they have a bar. A lot of nice, some of these independents and even larger bars or liquor stores, they have a bar where you can go and sample whatever you want to sample.
Very
And
fairly priced, might I add.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great opportunity for people to kind of uh, test drive some of these new products and again stretch your wings a little bit.
Test drive's a great way to say that. Like if you're worried about the high price tag that you're going to have to fork out for, give it a test run.
Yeah,
Go sit down, have a flight. For that, the price you spend on that flight might introduce you to four whiskeys that you didn't even know you liked.
definitely, definitely.
So outside of the whiskey space, where are you in the art space right now? Like what are you digging on in the art world?
Right now, actually, we are looking for a new illustrator for what we call a kind of landmark series that we're working on for Rabbit Hole. So I'm in conversation with a handful of new emerging artists, which is kind of fun to look at their work. I think that if I look beyond whiskey, what's happened is, spirits has become kind of my life's work, obviously. And my wife, who was also a psychologist, recently decided to follow my suit, so closed her practice, and she's bought a couple of brands, Italian brands. So I'm helping her out a little bit with a new Amaro brand and a new
Ooh.
vermouth and aperitif brand. The vermouth actually is fun because it's finished in bourbon barrels. So a lot of cool things that are happening artistically, if you would, creatively outside of whiskey, but still within the spirits category.
I'll tell you, as it I love that people are starting to geek out on these things as much as I guess I do. I love it when people are talking Amaro, or I love it when if you get Nancy going and you start getting into some of those old school spirits that she's digging on. Like you can really have some fun when you start playing around with that.
Oh my God, yeah. That's the beauty of it. It's the one of the things I've learned is it is such a rich industry, and you look at brands and products that been on the market or on the market. There's so many great things out there that are not on everybody's radar. And for me, finding those gems and experiences is part of what gives me a lot of pleasure.
I've been educating my wife on Amaro recently, and just watching her take to it and get excited about it, and see that the possibilities do go beyond what she even knew, a month ago.
Yeah.
It's very fun to see, and I think that's the spark that keeps everything moving forward, is that you can add to, and as you educate people, they know they can add to.
Yeah, and I think what I've learned, especially recently in the last year, digging into the Italian kind of experience, has been that occasion-based use, right? So the idea of having an aperitif before meal, and then you have your glass of wine, or you can have a cocktail before meal, and then a digestivi. As using having an amaro as a kind of a digestivi after dinner drink is just such a lovely experience. And we're not talking about sitting at a meal for an hour. We're talking about a 3 hour experience, right?
Right.
Where it really becomes a lovely communal experience, and you're enjoying great spirits with the food that you're eating.
Well, it bridges everything. It bridges it together, and it takes it from a one-dimensional experience to, like, I don't even want to say three, like a quattro dimensional experience.
Yeah, 100%, man. Definitely.
Well, I know that the Ambrulé, it's is it still in the? I know it came out in November. Is it still in the distillery, do you think, or where can
Yeah,
people
it
get
should
this
be.
bad
Yeah,
boy?
I think we're still, we basically release a new distillery series every quarter or so. I know we still have some bottles at the distillery. If people get the chance to go in, they should. And I think, we might even be able to, for folks that are not in Kentucky, to do it through just DTC through our online channel, because it's a wonderful pick. If you get a chance to experience it, definitely encourage you guys to pick up a bottle.
100%. And if you're in Kentucky, I would say go to the distillery. It is an absolute experience. Like it's a whiskey experience, it's a visual experience, it's an artistic experience, and there's great whiskey there on top of it. So you can have every kind of fun you want to have, from the visual to the palate.
Well, and I tell you, I'm very proud of my team because we were just named actually the best distillery tour in America. And I think it kind of echoes what you're saying. I think people will have a really lovely experience. If you get a chance to be in Kentucky and Louisville, please stop by Rabbit Hole.
Well, Kavi, I appreciate your time today. It's been fun picking your brain. I think I could probably hold you hostage for a little, like for the rest of the evening, but I won't do that to you, as this is good whiskey, and I appreciate you coming and talking to me about it.
Hey, man, it's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope we can do it again soon.
I hope so. Maybe next time, same place, same time, we can get together at the distillery and share another pour.
I would love that. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.